In presence of European Union and UN envoy, Yemeni parliament inaugurates the new Leadership Presidential Council in Aden. The Joint Forces engineering teams restore main roads and bridges in Hodeidah Governorate. The United Nations announces that Houthis have agreed to stop recruiting children as soldiers. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swalam. Yemeni Presidential Leadership Council sworn in before the parliament in the interim capital Aden. The move came after the arrival of the council's members from outside the country. On the 7th of April, former President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi delegated his powers to a presidential council that will carry out leadership duties. The new team is made up of 8 members and is chaired by Rashad Al-Alimi. The PLC will assume the duties of both the president and his deputy. Parliament Speaker Sultan Al-Barakani affirmed that the Parliament will support the PLC and the government to achieve their national tasks and peace. During a session of the House of Representatives in Aden, Barakani urged the PLC to restore the state as a priority, along with improving living standards, providing security, and boosting the economy. The Houthi militia continued its violations of the UN-sponsored truce on the western coast. The military media of the joint forces said it had monitored 30 violations of the truce committed by the Houthi militia yesterday on the fighting fronts in Hodeidah and Taiz. Houthi militia continues their hostile acts against service facilities south of Hodeidah, the latest of which was the militia's destruction of main roads and the digging of trenches. The following report has more details.
Hostile practices and sabotage actions are being pursued by the Houthi militia against surface facilities that benefit people in the south of Hodeidah Governorate, the latest of which was the militia's destruction of main roads and digging trenches in them. This came at a time when the joint forces are working to reopen roads and repair bridges. Destruction isn't unusual for a militia coming from the fossil age, as its sabotage operations included removing the road that is located in the Damascus area south of Al-Jarrahi and links between the governorates of Al-Hodeidah and Taiz. According to the directions of the head of the resistance to open the humanitarian routes, we are here to rebuild the bridges that were destroyed by the Houthi militia in the newly liberated areas. As to all the humanitarian routes and outlets are ready, but as to the Houthi militia, they are not. They have removed the road in Al-Jarrahi, which indicates that they are not keen on peace or to alleviate the suffering of people. This is their habit of destroying the infrastructure. On the other hand, the joint forces on the west coast are prepared to open the roads, a step they committed to do as part of truce to alleviate the suffering of citizens and remove all obstacles along their movement. Houthi sabotage operations are considered a rejection of the path to peace. The militia's clear aim is to destroy the roads, blow up bridges, and all facilities that have been built for Yemenis during the past decades.
The Yemeni Network for Rights and Freedoms revealed that the Houthi militia committed 203 violations of the truce. The violations were documented during the period from 4th to 17th of April in a number of governorates. They included murder, enforced disappearance, arrest, torture, and assault on worshippers. Navigational sources said the Houthi militia is carrying out mobilization operations along the northern coast of the city of Hodeidah. They confirmed that the Houthi militia is using fishing boats to spread naval mines that target international navigation in the Red Sea. Last week, U.S. Navy established a new task force to patrol the Red Sea of Yemen. The Houthi militia released members of Al-Qaeda. Security sources confirmed that the militia released about 31 members of Al-Qaeda who were being held in prisons under their control. In 1 week, Massan Project for Demining had removed more than 1,500 mines planted by the Houthi militia in various regions of Yemen. The number of mines that were cleared so far during the month of April rose to about 3,000 mines, bringing the number of the mines cleared since the beginning of Massam project to more than 300,000 mines. The United Nations praised the new signed action plan to safeguard children affected by armed conflict in Yemen. More than 10,200 children have been killed or maimed since the beginning of the conflict, and thousands more have been recruited into the fighting. The following report has more on that.
Houthi rebels have agreed to stop recruiting children who spent years forced to fight in the country's 7-year war, according to the UN. The Houthis signed an action plan with the United Nations to seize and prohibit the recruitment and use of minors in armed conflict, as well as the death and injuries of children and attacks on schools and hospitals. The rebels pledged to identify minors in their ranks and release them within 6 months, according to UN spokesperson. Nearly 3,500 children have been identified as having been recruited and deployed in Yemen's civil war, according to the UN. In 2018, a senior Houthi military officer informed the Associated Press that the group had inducted 18,000 child soldiers into its army by that time, and a former child soldier said that boys as young as 10 were recruited. The Houthis used complex patterns to forcibly recruit children and put them in hostile areas under its control in Yemen. Many children were killed as a result, and hundreds were injured. It doesn't stop here. The militia's targeting of children was not limited to intimidating them, but also targeted their schools, either by destroying them or forcing them to replace school pens with Kalashnikovs after they brainwashed their cycles, exposed them to scenes of killing and violence. The Human Rights Report monitored the Houthi recruitment of 1,748 children and pushed them to the front lines. Not to mention the loss of the lives of hundreds of children, making children in Yemen pay the bill of the Houthis' actions.
Yemeni citizens struggle to meet simple needs such as access to clean water, sanitation, food, and primary health care. Leukemia patients are among those who are most affected by the health care shortage. The following report has more details.
In Yemen, millions of people are going through the worst humanitarian crisis in modern history. While we live in a time when infrastructure and basic services have become an integral part of daily life, the Yemeni citizen struggles to meet his simple basic needs, such as access to clean water, sanitation, food, and primary health care. These crises double the suffering of leukemia patients in Yemen in light of the collapse of health situation and spread of diseases and epidemics. Nearly 8 years of war have pushed the fragile health system to the brink of collapse. It's more difficult than ever for people with chronic diseases to get treatment. During the war, nearly half of Yemen's hospitals and health facilities were damaged, bringing the health system to devastation, as the current situation resulted in 35,000 cancer patients, and approximately 10,000 new cases are diagnosed each year, with the hope of surviving, not thriving.
This disease is very dangerous and we cannot afford the medicines. We need to be provided with tests and treatment finances. Government organizations who should provide us with blood bags do not do so. Employees exploit this by selling blood bags illegally.
Patients with deadly diseases were the most affected by the civil war, noting that many cancer patients skyrocketing medical bills or have no access to medical treatment centers. The treatment center in Sana'a is the only specialized hospital for children inflicted with blood diseases, and now it's in dire need of medicines and other supplies, as the blockade cut the support from humanitarian organizations outside the country.
These diseases need tests and treatments, and families can't afford them, especially the CRP test, as it costs 45,000 rial, and a virus treatment dose costs more than 50,000 rial. Virus C is considered the main problem, especially for children with leukemia, so we call on concerned authorities to provide these patients with medicine and treatment costs.
Suffering of patients in Yemen is doubled or even tripled due to the chronic diseases distress, and patients even face harsh conditions and a constant struggle to obtain medical care amid the ongoing war.
Coming next. Al Saleh Foundation continues distributing cash assistance to displaced people in different governorates across the country. Welcome back. Al Saleh Social Foundation for Development is preparing to distribute Ramadan aid in a number of governorates. Al Saleh Foundation targets the displaced people and the poor families who have been crushed by the war. The following report has more details.
In the interim capital of Aden, Al Saleh Social Foundation for Development launched a project to distribute Ramadan aid to the displaced and poor families. The foundation aims to secure livelihoods for displaced and needy families and to help them acquire the basic necessities during Ramadan.
This is the second time Al Saleh Charity Foundation conducts cash assistance for displaced people in Aden. This camp also received aid last year. A sum of 30,000 riyals is given to each family. Although the cash assistance is simple, it still can help alleviate the suffering of displaced people here.
At a time when other relief groups had abandoned the displaced people due to funding shortage, Al Saleh Foundation was there to stand by them and ease their pain and suffering throughout the holy month of Ramadan.
May Allah bless Al Saleh Foundation for all they've done. We're deeply grateful for their aid.
Our circumstances are difficult. This aid came at the right time.
We needed this money. We had nothing.
More than 150 individuals in need benefited from Al Saleh Foundation Ramadan's relief distribution program, which targeted IDP camps in Mualla.
We thank Al Saleh Foundation for their charitable zakah and their aid to the displaced people. This aid came at a great time, especially for families that have children. We hope more people can visit this region and see how much we truly require aid to survive.
Optimistic outlooks and hope radiate among displaced beneficiaries. The return of Al Saleh Foundation activities heralds positive change, as well as security and stability that was lost due to the war ignited by the Houthi militia in Yemen.
In the same context, Al Saleh Foundation, along with concerned committees, are listing targeted families to start the process of distributing assistance in a fair and indiscriminate manner. The project aims to distribute cash assistance to the families in Ma'rib. More details are in the following report.
In order to give and alleviate the hardship of life and support the displaced and those who are in need, Al Saleh Social Foundation for Development launched its Ramadan project in Ma'rib Governorate to help the people in need, the poor and the displaced who are living in a tragic situation due to displacement and the deteriorating economic situation.
We are trying to reach as many people as we can through Al Saleh Charitable Foundation. This foundation was established by the Ambassador Ahmed Ali Abdullah Saleh. We thank him for this, and we are willing to do more for the people in Ma'rib as they went through a lot. They were abused and tortured. They live amid war, and the parties to the conflict provided no help. Al Saleh Foundation's Ramadan project came in a very critical time. In Ma'rib we have 5,000 cases, and we have allocated 30,000 riyals for each case.
A project offered by Al Saleh Foundation as an emergency response to the humanitarian situation experienced by the displaced in Ma'rib Governorate, where the distribution of the first batch of aid to the neediest families began in a Nakia camp, especially during the month of Ramadan.
The aid was delivered in a very critical time for the displaced people, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. As they suffered many periods of displacement, they went through almost 6 displacements.
The project has a plan that includes all segments of the society, which is the goal pursued by Al Saleh Foundation in supporting Yemenis since its establishment. And the organizers emphasize that the project included a distributive plan that includes all segments of the society according to their needs and without any discrimination or favoritism.
The aid is not specified to a certain party or entity. However, it's for the people of Yemen, regardless their social and political affiliations. The aid is delivered to all people without discrimination or favoritism. The distribution of aid is mainly for the people who need it most and for the displaced in Ma'rib. Now we are in a Sumaya camp that includes more than 2,000 displaced families.
a purely humanitarian goal to help Yemenis affected by the war and alleviate their suffering. An approach laid down by the martyr leader Ali Abdullah Saleh, to be translated today through the projects of Al Saleh Social Foundation that are implemented in various governorates of the Republic, including Ma'rib Governorate.
The Houthis prevented merchants in Ib Governorate from helping the poor with financial donations. Traders said the Houthi militia prevented merchants from distributing aid to the needy people, forcing them to provide their money through the so-called Zakat Authority. Yemen's heritage has been destroyed due to the conflict. The war in the country calls the attention of the world to preserve the Yemeni civilization. More details are in the following report.
Every year, people all over the world celebrate their cultural heritage, simply by living their lives in a way that embodies who they are and where they came from. One day a year is set aside to celebrate the joint history and heritage of the human race. World Heritage Day comes every year on the 18th of April to encourage the humanity to be proud of its roots, to bring awareness to important cultural monuments and sites, and most importantly, to espouse the importance of preserving the world's cultures. However, in war-torn Yemen, people have little to celebrate and be proud of debris which remained from their cultural monuments and historical sites after losing control of the capital Sana'a to Yemen's northern. The Houthi movement has destroyed Yemeni heritage, which was prolonged for thousands of years. The conflict in Yemen has waged on Yemeni victims a lot, and most importantly, the silent victim, which is Yemen's millennia-old cultural heritage. Yemen is one of the richest countries in the region when it comes to natural, cultural, historical, and architectural heritage. Amid the absence of officials' intervention and lack of awareness of the importance of antiquities and their preservation, these antiquities remain suffering from extinction and collapse. And this is what the situation for dozens of ancient monuments, historical buildings, and museums that have been systematically targeted and destroyed in an unprecedented act of cultural warfare. As the war has devastated every single field in the country, the cultural sector also has been dramatically affected by the prolonged conflict, resulting in higher unemployment rates, especially for youth, and severe scarcity of cultural programming. The situation has even exacerbated by the long-term lack of maintenance, weak governance of heritage properties, and scarcity of technical and financial resources. The country's cultural and historical heritage has been ravaged despite repetitive calls by UNESCO to all fighting parties to do their utmost to protect Yemeni's unique heritage. Nations are recognized by their cultural heritage, and undoubtedly, Yemen has a rich heritage that extends to 1,200 years ago. However, the state of monuments in Yemen confronts devastation, and it is expected to diminish the Yemeni inheritance unless the concerned authorities intervene and end the vandalism actions.
Here's a reminder of the main headlines. In presence of European Union and UN envoy, Yemeni parliament inaugurates the new Leadership Presidential Council in Aden. The Joint Forces engineering teams restore main roads and bridges in Hodeidah Governorate. The United Nations announces that Houthis have agreed to stop recruiting children as soldiers. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.